All right, hello and welcome. So the event, the multiplayer event, has been live for like almost 10 days now, and I've been spending most of it working on the new unique for Meteor, the Harbinger of Stars. So it's this one here. If you're not familiar with it, it allows us to proc crits, or excuse me, proc meteors off of crits. And so I just want to do a quick video kind of showcasing it a little bit and talking about my experience with it. I really went heavy on the theory crafting on this to try and find a build that works well with it. When we first saw it, we kind of thought it was going to be super broken OP. Turns out not the case, really, for a number of reasons. So let's just get into talking about what's going on with it, how we're kind of using it, and what we've tested to try to get to this point. So obviously we want to get crits to get the meteor to proc, but we also have the problem of when you crit, it takes the cost of mana. So you've got to find a good balance between having enough mana and mana regen to get a bunch of the procs to go, but also get your crit up there. And it's a pretty tight balance to try and find where it is, and a lot of skills can't really do it. Also, if you play this not in Sorc, you don't have access to the skill trees. Still some viable builds out there. For example, I've been messing around with a Dragon Song build, which is pretty fun, but it's really more of a secondary addition to it than a primary damage dealer. So I really wanted like a primary. This works as the main damage for it, and we can use the skill tree. So we ended up with Mana Strike. We tried out Glacier. Glacier can only really handle a single meteor, and it also kind of gets regulated to, you need to make Glacier your damage, and then Meteor can do your secondary damage. It helps with clear. So that doesn't really fit the goal that I had in mind. Still works for that, but again, you're really making Glacier your primary damage. If you try to do like I did here, the 6 meteor option, which is a lot of fun, looks like this when it goes down, you're gonna run out of mana real fast with Glacier. It just can't keep up on single target. Especially, it can kind of keep up in clear. Single target, it gets kind of wrecked, and the rotation felt pretty horrible. You had to use focus with it, and that was on a 10-second cooldown because you had to use it when it's negative mana, and you've got to hit it when it's negative mana. If it goes positive mana, you get kind of screwed on that one too. So really did not enjoy that playstyle, nor did it feel like it was the strongest way to play, since you should really be scaling Glacier with that anyway. So what we ended up with is a Mana Strike build where we're really pushing all of the mana we can on Mana Strike. We're pushing the mana node here, here, here. We're taking this node to make sure we can guaranteed crit. We're taking this too if we run out of mana so that we get it quickly. And this works pretty well. That procs quite a bit. On clear, it's quite excellent. We also have tried the lightning version or two-handed version versus a one-hander with Bastion of Honor. The reason we've done this is because when you use, say, the staff and the helmet to get more damage, which it does do more than double the damage, you're also an absolute glass cannon, and if you're going to use a Mana Strike, you have to be really, really, really close to the enemies in order to hit them. If you try to go with the ranged version, it's 20% of the mana gain. That's not really enough to sustain. So this has to be very close to the enemies, and this has to be a sorcerer build too, because Spellblade doesn't have access to the Meteor tree, since Meteor is the mastery skill. All that is to say that defenses are poor on this build, very, very poor, especially for how close you need to be. And some things that you'd expect to work, like mana spent is given to you as ward, doesn't actually work at all. It doesn't proc that, so that makes it even more limited. So after all this testing, I've come down to the point that I think the Bastion of Honor version with fire is probably the best all-arounder, even though the lightning version is significantly more damage. It's, again, more than double the damage. This version actually allows you to survive at higher corruptions that compared to the lightning. With the lightning one is really good, like 100 corruption, maybe 150. Once you get to like 200 plus, it's a lot of positioning and just trying your best to not get hit. Can be very scary, and it doesn't take much to get just destroyed by the content. So this is what we're at right now. I've set up the meteor tree to look like this. Taking the crit nodes, we're taking most of the Creator-born stuff here. Actually, only 4 or 5 in that right now. We're taking 30% over here, but yeah, we're getting all 6 meteors, and that's the big part. On clear, this is amazing. On single target, it's kind of hit or miss, truly, like whether or not you'll proc the actual belt. It might not. A lot of manual casts of meteors to kind of keep the thing going, but if you get it to cycle itself, because it'll do that, like it can crit, meteors can crit and then proc other meteors. If you get that cycle to be continued, you can do a whole lot of damage even on single targets. Larger bosses are better, smaller bosses kind of suck on the build, but it's all doable. So let me just show you quickly what it kind of looks like. This is a 258 corruption with a number of modifiers, both offensive and defensive. I hope I don't die in this. This is all being done, you know, live. Just to give you an example what it looks like, particularly on clear, which is definitely its strength. Very good on clear. It likes lots of enemies, like likes groups a lot. The more the merrier, because each individual crit can proc the belt, and you can see it gets pretty crazy. As long as the procs go off, then those procs can proc other stuff, or other procs. It can proc on proc on proc. You can really do quite well with it. So on mapping on echoes, it is not the safest thing in the world, but it definitely works. Did I not kill that somehow? You survived with a sliver. That is pretty impressive. Oh god, don't kill me, please. Please don't kill me. Okay, here we go. Oh god, don't kill me. I'm gonna die. There's way too many of those guys and I have no potions. So yeah, as you can see, the defensive side, especially on like dots, it's really scary. This is not a tanky build. This is one of the scarier builds I've made, even with the Bastion. You are you're constantly looking and making sure you're not running out of health, and you're not out of potions, and that you can regen. You need to be meteoring to leech. It's pretty much the only leech you're going to get. You technically leech off Mana Strike, but when you hit for 20 damage, it doesn't do you a lot of good. These guys are not fun right now. Just need to get some more meteor launches. Yeah, you see we are like blowing through this early, but then it doesn't take much to run into some serious issues. The wrong group of enemies can do a lot of damage, can be very hard to handle. And the wrong modifiers too. This build really struggles with some modifiers more than really any build I've ever played. The big example would be crit avoidance. It hates crit avoidance with a passion, because unlike you know, most builds that do hit and do crit, they're gonna very much dislike it, but they still work, right? Maybe do a third of the damage if you got a lot of crit multi, but they still work. They'll still do what they're supposed to do. It turns off the procs from this one, and so that pretty much ruins the build right there. So you can't even take crit avoidance on this one. It hates dodge. It hates lots of damage on the enemies. It's going to get wrecked by that because it's just not tanky enough, especially on the dots. Like that was like kind of worst case scenario there a little bit with those enemies. And you saw I had to do a lot of manual casts. So like it's just got a lot of downsides, a lot of negatives that you're going to have to overcome to play it. You have to be very careful with which modifiers you choose in the Monolith. Bossing is going to just be kind of hit or miss RNG, whether or not you get the procs that you want. And then if you get the wrong enemies that do a lot of dot damage on the ground, it can be very hard to survive that, especially if you're not getting meteor procs consistently, because if you're not getting meteor procs, you are not getting leech, and if you're not getting leech, you're not sustaining, and you're quickly finding yourself pretty close to dead. The biggest way I've been able to offset that problem is by putting on an Aurora's Time Glass as well, so that if we happen to get below 30% health, we don't die, which will happen from dots every time pretty much. We get like a kind of like a get out of jail free card. That's still a pretty scary way to play, and you got to keep track of that. You got to make sure that it's not on cooldown while you're fighting those things. So this build works, and it can be very satisfying to play for sure. When you get large groups, it's just going to annihilate them, and the screen just full of meteors. Speaking of full of meteors, another downside is if you're fighting something with a lot of mechanics and you're proccing a lot of meteors, you have no idea what's happening. Like you can't see the ground. Almost all of the mechanics of the fight are unknown to you at that point. So if you don't know the game really well, this is going to get you killed because you just don't even realize you're standing in something. That's very dangerous. I've died to multiple things from that reason, and I know the game very well. So lots of downsides, lots of fun though. It's got the massive clear is super satisfying. But yeah, I just wanted to showcase. I'm not sure if I'm going to make a build guide right now. I'm kind of leaning towards yes, but this isn't going to be one of the most powerful builds I've ever made. Well, one of the highest like tier builds I've ever made, because of all the downsides. The positives are very positive, but the negatives are very negative. So yeah, I just wanted to show you all what it kind of looks like, what the Meteor belt's doing right now, especially on a Sorc build, how it's playing, and you know where it's at as far as upsides, downsides. What I'd like to see from EHG as far as this belt, would like to see them change. I'd like to see the ward gained from mana spent actually proc with it. I would like to see the proc rate of the belt go up a little bit, maybe about 30%, and maybe put a very small cooldown up to half a second on it to help with the meteor cycles, to make them more consistent while not making them too crazy. I think that would be really good. Another thing I'd really kind of like to see is aftermath actually work. It doesn't work with the meteor belt. The procs do not give you back a portion of your mana cost. This could also help with mana management, maybe open up some other options like Glacier to work a little bit better. So that would be a nice way to potentially improve the build variety that the belt currently offers. All right, I think that's all I want to talk about with this belt. Thank you so much for watching. If you are more interested in how the belt works, or interested in knowing how the build works, would like me to actually make a build guide on it, please let me know in the comments, and I will be happy to talk about it with you and consider making the guide if enough people want it. In the meantime, enjoy your time in Last Epoch, and I will see you all again real soon.